Oh, got the alert. Got the alert.
But ding. Oops, gonna mute this. All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Derry Merkins. With me again, President and CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. What's up, Cody?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Pounding a lot of coffee this morning because it's been a heck of a week. But today especially was pretty wild because we had an interview with Irish National Radio at the bright and early hour of 4 a.m. Las Vegas time. But that was a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah, it really was, and I'm with you, man. I am dragging the proverbial ass today because that
And you can
was.
say ass. You can say ass on the Gunner Technology Live.
We weren't sure about that on the Irish National Radio show, but we can definitely say ass here on the, and we can say ass without even losing our PG rating in the iTunes store. So
It's because America is better. So let's dive right in here. First things first, obviously the Country Shore giveaway, which you can sign up for on our Facebook page. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. Visit them at countryshoreoutfitters.com. Our winner this week is Laura B from Jacksonville, Florida. So Laura, you'll have a Country Shore hat heading your way, and some copies of our technology ebooks also attached to that. So enjoy those. Secondly, Cody, you got the question of the week from last week.
yeah, I do. The question of the week from last week. Oh my gosh, you know what? It was actually I couldn't find it when I was going back to do show prep. It was it was what would you rather go without, TV or your mobile phone? And
Right.
it was overwhelmingly they'd rather go without TV. So, and again, we kind of left that open ended. So, because technically you could probably watch TV on your mobile phone. So we kind of didn't cut it down. But and I couldn't find it for some reason when I checked right before the show. But it was overwhelmingly giving up TV, which kind of makes sense as people are cutting ye old cord, as they say, as the cool kids say. So it kind of bears out in the real world. That's what's going on.
I honestly don't know, especially with those damn kids. I don't know how many people could survive without their phone at this point.
Oh
I
my
think it's
gosh.
become sort of like an extension of themselves almost.
Yeah. It would be so weird to if phones just disappeared tomorrow. What the younger generation do? Heck, I mean, honestly, in terms of business, I'm attached to my phone too. So like, it's just tough to even imagine a time when there wasn't, a mobile phone attached to my arm, and it wasn't even that long ago where that wasn't the case.
It's bad too when there's articles that come out where it's like I went a day without my phone and here's what it was like, and the article is basically like it was absolute torture, and that's a day, so it's not looking good. It'll probably be I went an hour without my phone and here's what it was like
Well,
very soon.
and we talked about this, and the sad reality is what is on your mobile phone is actually probably more interesting than anyone you can interact with. But that's
Yeah,
because everyone is interacting with their phone and they don't actually do anything of interest. So it's like a
it's a little
chicken.
bit of a feedback loop kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough.
I,
It's tough to break out of that cycle.
I do think it's funny when I hear people, in a kind of a situation like that and be like, oh, is your phone more interesting than I am? And I'm just thinking like the person's probably like, yeah, my phone is more interesting than you are.
Do you want an honest answer? Or...
Do you want praise or do you want feedback?
Yeah. Do you have the complete catalog of Super Nintendo games on your person currently? Because the phone does.
Oh man.
It's
So
tough. It's tough to compete with a mobile device.
and so this week's question is kind of in the same line of the whole television thing. It's would you pay for cable if it were the only way you could get faster in-home Wi-Fi? And
Oh, that's
this
interesting. Is there
this
a plan
yeah,
there?
yeah, actually, so Comcast is
Mm-hmm.
basically saying they're rolling out this super high speed internet. I don't even know what the down is. I get 100 down from Comcast here, which is pretty peppy, but they're rolling out even better connectivity than that. But you have to get cable through Comcast to be eligible for these super high download speeds. So
wow.
yeah.
What does a Comcast package go for? Like $40
Well,
for basic cable?
yeah, and so that's the weird thing is like, so I actually,
Sorry, start over. You cut out there right after I asked what
oh,
you get for $40.
so that's the actually weird thing because I just get internet from Comcast. I don't get cable from Comcast. And so they always call me up and they're like, you can actually just be paying less by getting cable. And I'm like, yeah, for 6 months or 12 months,
right,
but I'm going to be entering into a 24-month contract. And after that first 12 months, can you guarantee that my rate won't go up? And they're like, no, we can't guarantee that because that's where they get you.
Right.
So
exactly, yeah.
The devil's in the details. You never really know. But yeah, like the basic package is somewhere between like $30 and $40 a month. And you get like PBS and that's it.
That's all I watch, honestly. I have a TV in my kitchen that has an antenna. And it gets like over-the-air HD channels, so it'll get NBC, CBS, Fox that you can watch sports on. But if there's no sports on, I'll throw Create TV on and just watch people, like build houses and stuff. That's good entertainment.
Is that is PBS the station where that puffy-haired artist is on?
You must be talking about Ross, right? What's his
Bob
name?
Ross?
Bob Ross. Yeah, it absolutely is. I think that was out of the San Francisco PBS. But yeah, he's on air every morning, just painting the landscape and happy trees.
I'm not sure what you need beyond Bob Ross and
that's why I don't know why anyone pays for cable at this point.
Because
it's kind of weird.
To go back to the question, no one is more interesting than Bob Ross.
Yeah, he's the only person who could compete with a mobile device.
Because he could draw one.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, a very happy one in a forest. Okay, so let's get to the question of the week, the meat and potatoes, the Irish meat and potatoes of this week's episode. And the question of the week this week is somewhat related to last week's question, but it's what is the difference between working in the public sector versus working with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, and we obviously entrepreneurs are part of the private sector, and we differentiate the two because there's such a different line of work. So we do understand that entrepreneurs by and large are in the private sector, but again, we treat it as two different things. So when we're talking about the entrepreneurs versus the government, we're talking about two totally different things, man. We thought that there was a lot of there was a lot of differences, but dissimilarities. There was a lot of differences between the public and private sector. Just kind of magnify that by 10 when you're talking about entrepreneurs and government, because starting from the fact where, as we said, public sector work is pretty known. It's pretty cut and dry. There may be some nuance involved there, but usually the government's trying to play catch up and they kind of know what they want because they've seen it in the private sector and they kind of want that as part of their agency or whatever. Well, entrepreneurs, man, you are working on, solely an idea, and usually an idea that hasn't even been fully formed yet. And the product is changing by the day, let alone the week or the month. So it's almost completely opposite. It's like, flying commercial versus jumping out of a plane kind of thing.
It's a perfect analogy. I guess for the hypothetical viewer who hasn't seen last week's episode, it's probably going to be a lot of overlap, but we can at least still cover it from the entrepreneurial standpoint. It'll be slightly different. But I think probably, like you said, the main difference is the upfront planning, where the public sector is going to be a lot of explicitly delineated work where they know exactly what they wanted, exactly what budget. Whereas entrepreneurial work is going to be upfront, a lot about building a relationship and trying to build the best product for them that you can in terms of long-term growth, because I think the goals there are entirely different too.
Right. I mean, you have to look at the scope of the project. So generally, not always, but generally the entrepreneurs we work with are kind of mass consumer oriented, sort of like change the world type thing, or social mass market social networks, things like that. And so their scope is the planet. And so even the largest agencies, and my goodness, I was shocked to learn how big some of the federal agencies are. Their scope is defined to usually not only that department, but that agency, and usually a sub-department of that agency. So even if it is the entire department, like the Department of the Interior, Department of Defense, it has a defined scope and a narrow scope compared to, like, we need mass penetration that you're dealing with when you're talking about entrepreneurs.
I guess there's a difference too with the user bases of the two entities, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, the user base for the government tends to be, kind of older and more professional, and kind of, as you said, very focused. Whereas kind of the user base for a product that is entrepreneurial in nature is going to be early, especially if it's mass market. It's going to be early adopters. It's going to be young people who are comfortable with technology. That's going to be the initial user base that you're going after.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting too in terms of design of the applications themselves. I would feel like the entrepreneurial applications would seem to push the boundaries a bit more than the public sector applications.
Yeah, and it's also we've touched on this a number of times in other episodes, but it's another reason why we try to get entrepreneurs to launch, because no matter how amazing your product is, at first it's going to be the early adopters and the innovators and the young people who are going to use your mass market product. And so they have a very high tolerance for minor bugs and defects, because what we always hear is, oh, well, we don't want to launch and people don't like it, or there's a minor problem and people uninstall it. That doesn't really happen among the early adopters. Like, they kind of get their kicks off of being first and being in there early. So they understand the game. They understand that the first launch is not the last launch, and so they're going to stick with it. By the time kind of the laggards and the connectors start using your product, then you want to be kind of buttoned up. But it's so much more important in the early adoption phase to launch and iterate than it is to get the product, quote unquote, right.
Two things there. First off, I think this is something of a tangent, but I feel like there might be a misconception of a user base's ability to stick with you through early bugs and early changes and stuff like that, because there are these stories that come out where there are mass exoduses from existing applications after something changes. So I'm thinking specifically about Snapchat and their redesign and the disastrous effect that that's had. So I wonder if that causes people to be hesitant about getting their product perfect out of the gate, because they see these stories about millions upon millions of users leaving because they don't like a product, and they think that's what happens when you initially launch a product.
Yeah. And really, it takes a lot to have mass abandonment. Snapchat's in a weird boat because they have a lot of competition now from Facebook and Instagram. There's a lot of alternatives, and I mean direct alternatives, not like a different type of social network, but there's a lot of social networks that offer the exact same thing as Snapchat. That's when abandonment kind of starts to play into it, when there are direct options. Clones almost. And so, yeah, when you hear about, and also Snapchat has, I don't know what their user base is, probably in the billions, almost the billions.
I think it was 280 million actually. But
okay,
that might be totally wrong. Let me look it up right now as you.
Well, yeah. So my point is you have a lot of users, and so any type of, they could lose 1 million users, and we're talking about a small fraction of their user base. That's a large sum or a large total, but relatively it's not that big. So you're going to have people who do defect, and among early adopters that rate is lower. So if you have 100 early adopters, that defection rate might be 0.5%. And then when you get into kind of mass penetration, that defection percentage might be 2%, and 2% is a lot in total in terms of the overall number, but not in terms of the overall percentage. And so people just hear that number, oh, they lost 2 million users, and they freak out and they're like, oh, well, we can't launch because we would lose 2 million users. Well, no, you wouldn't. You might lose a percentage of your users and a very small percentage of your users.
It's 190 million users, by the way, which is pretty good. I think 280 actually was their revenue. 245 is their, or 230 is their revenue.
240 pesos?
I think so. 240 pesos is their Q1 revenue.
Okay.
Which is below estimates. People thought they were going to hit that 245, but no. The other thing I was going to say is, as far as like early adopters, I mean, you still see it where people will leave like a first comment on pages, or they'll race to be the first one on live streams. I think the underestimation of the importance of early adopters and how important that is to people to be able to say, you know, I was here, you know, I was user, you know, 840 or something like that. I mean, even with Facebook, I mean, I think we were like top 30,000 users or something like that. So, you know, it obviously holds no weight for us. I couldn't care less, but some people love that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's weird. They get this kind of high from being first and being early, and I mean I don't really understand it, but I mean there is a kind of they are very valuable in the fact that they're also more apt to give feedback than people. Like, instead of just defecting, they're going to voice their complaint, but they're going to stick with it. And so these are the people, these early adopters, they're the ones who kind of really have the chance to shape the direction that the product ultimately goes.
And they're extremely valuable for entrepreneurs as far as shaping their product and not necessarily perfecting it. I think we need to get that idea of perfection out of people's minds, because nothing's ever going to be perfect. It's always just going to get a little bit better over time. But that's why those users are so valuable to entrepreneurs as opposed to the public sector, where clearly they just want something to be done.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Like, even when consumers don't like a company, their loyalty to that company extends way further than you would believe. I mean, look at the ridiculousness with Wells Fargo, how they were signing people up for credit cards without their knowledge. I mean, just kind of the worst PR you could think of for a banking institution or a financial institution. And yeah, some people left, but they're still a giant financial institution with a lot of customers and consumers who knew what happened and made the conscious decision to stay with them.
Yeah, that's one, to your point, where there are tons of other options. There's not a dearth of banks that they could have switched to.
Right, exactly. And now switching financial institutions is really easy. So I mean, there is even some of the situations where you think this is just the worst type of PR nightmare usually ends up being kind of glossed over in terms of, you know, customer retention.
So let's talk about the end goals of entrepreneurs and the public sector. As far as it seems to be more of a moving target with entrepreneurs, like we kind of talked about, where the app sort of is developed much more iteratively based on feedback from users, whereas the public sector out of the gate sort of knows exactly what it needs and exactly what budget it has.
Well, yeah, and even look at that from a broader perspective, and the goal of entrepreneurial projects versus the goal of public sector projects is a stark contrast, because usually the entrepreneur has kind of one or two things in mind: is to become very wealthy from an IPO or an acquisition or whatever, or to change the world. Those are two extremely lofty goals. There might be I swear I had a third one in mind, but I can't think of it now. There could be a third goal that I'm just kind of glossing over here. But those are generally the two goals for an entrepreneurial project. the government has very much more subdued expectations. They just want something that is less crappy than what they've been using for the past 5 years. I mean, that's really what they're looking for.
Which in general is a very reachable bar.
Right, exactly. So the expectations, or the goals of the types of projects are so vastly different. Well, and again, the government, public sector projects want to stay within a budget and have something less crappy than what they've been using for the past 5 years. That's kind of the expectation. Entrepreneurs want to change the world and make a lot of money. So they're two very different type of overall arching goals.
And how does that affect the process of working with the public sector versus working with entrepreneurs? What are the week-to-week, month-to-month interactions between the two like?
Well, it's kind of crazy, right? Because in a lot of ways, working with the government is a lot better, because expectations are so low. They're so low. It is, when we go in to work with the government agency, they are generally blown away with what we're able to do in the amount of time that we're able to do it, with the budget that we're able to do it under. And if with an entrepreneur, usually it's like, yeah, okay, let's move on to the next thing. What are we doing next? It's not like you need the appreciation, and trust me, we don't. But it's a weird thing where it's kind of just so easy to please the stakeholder in a government project versus an entrepreneur who is just, again, because with the entrepreneur, it's a living thing. It's a very much, what have you done for me lately? Whereas the public sector work is going to have a clear end date in mind, and when that's approaching, and they've seen what you're able to do, they're kind of blown away.
So, are there any recommendations you would make as far as like developers or companies out there who are thinking about working in the public sector or working with entrepreneurs? Which one's better, or which one's better for small companies versus large companies? Any recommendations there?
So the thing about, and again, about all these projects, and I think we talked about this, you want a healthy mix of all three. You certainly, like, if you're a company like Gunner Technology and you're like, we're going to go all in and we're just going to do entrepreneurial projects, you're basically, you better have a lot of cash on hand. And it's basically like throwing all your efforts into a hedge fund, like huge reward, huge risk, because there's not a lot of cash that you get paid, especially in the early stages of that project. You're doing things sort of for equity, for rev share, for consideration on the next contract. And no matter how good the technology is behind an entrepreneurial project, the statistics say it's going to fail. Like the statistics are not on your side if you're an entrepreneur. That much is very much clear. So if you're an agency like Gunner Technology, you are really taking a lot of risk by only taking on entrepreneurs. On the same side, the government is kind of like what you said, what you see is what you get. You're not getting rev share in the government. You're not getting equity in the government.
You're only we can reach that deal.
You are going to bid a rate on a project, whether that's a fixed sum or an hourly, and you are going to get that. And even no matter how well you do, you may blow the doors off of the agency who contracted you. You may never get another contract from that agency, because that first contract has a definitive life. And when that's over, they have to go through the whole bid process all over again if they want to do any more work. So it's like, the government work is like bonds. And, I would say entrepreneur work is like cryptocurrency.
I was just about to make that analogy. I was thinking government was more like cash. Private sector is kind of like bonds, and entrepreneurs are like stocks.
Yeah.
In terms of risk and in terms of, because the government or the public sector work is sort of like a flat fee you're going to get. You know exactly what you're going to get. I mean, private sector, small or medium businesses, they have an existing business that you're basically just trying to help. You're trying to make better, more efficiently. Entrepreneurs, you know, they're shooting for the moon, and you know, the odds are they're going to miss.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's exactly right. And so you don't really, I mean, again, I don't want to tell other companies how to run their business, but you want a healthy portfolio. Just like when you have an investment portfolio, you want to have a client portfolio that is diverse.
Well, that's a great piece of advice to end on. So I think that'll wrap up this week's episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Make sure to check out next Thursday podcast on iTunes. Take a look at our blog post at gunnertech.com. Our ebooks are on sale at Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Make sure to check out our sponsor, Country Shore, countryshoreoutfitters.com. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. And make sure to sign up for the Country Shore giveaway on our Facebook page, where you can win a free hat like this awesome one and the one Cody has on, in addition to all of our awesome ebooks that we release at the end of all these series. Cody, remind them again what the question of the week is that they can answer on our Facebook page too.
Would you pay for cable if it were the only way to get higher speed in-home Wi-Fi?
Would you pay for cable if it's the only way to get higher speed? And what are the speeds you don't get if you don't sign up with cable? Do you know?
You know, I'll have to look that up. It was
okay. We'll have that info for you next week.
Yep.
So head on over to our Facebook page and answer that question of the week. Sign up for the Country Shore giveaway, and make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. I'm Derry. That's Cody. We'll see you all next week.